Sonic the Hedgehog is undeniably one of the most iconic video game characters, to the point where anyone could identify his spiky blue head without batting an eye. But it's no secret that after the 90s and early 2000s, his popularity started to decline. Now, unlike most kids of my generation, I didn't grow up playing Sonic, so I wasn't aware of this until recently. But when curiosity got the best of me as a high school student, I finally decided to give the series a fair shot to see what I'd been missing. So I dedicated the past few years to playing as many Sonic games as I could get my hands on. And ever since then, my feelings have been all over the place. This is cool, this is weird, this is fun, this is not fun, is this good, is this bad, this is a thing? What is this? I'm not gonna bore you guys with the same spiel that every Sonic video starts with. Oh, the blue guy has had a really bumpy ride this past decade. Yeah, no shit. But I'm not gonna turn a blind eye either and pretend like the series is perfect. It's not, and it's not for everyone. But I do feel that a lot of the negativity surrounding it is fairly contrived. And as someone who has neither feelings of nostalgia nor bitter hatred towards it, I felt that I was in a good position to take a neutral stance and explain my views on the franchise in its entirety, starting from the beginning. Today I'll be covering the 1991 classic, Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it's fair to assume that we're all familiar with the early rivalry between Nintendo and Sega by now, so I'll spare you the formalities on that and cut to the chase. However, it is important to reiterate why the creation of Sonic was so impressive. In a post-Mario world where every game company was trying to copy the plumber's success, Sega genuinely wanted to create a mascot that could stand on its own. And as much as we like to compare them, aside from being platformers, there's not a whole lot that Mario and Sonic have in common. In fact, I'd say that they have more differences than similarities. Levels are referred to as zones instead of worlds. The timer counts up rather than going down. Items are encapsulated in small televisions that can be broken. Enemies can be destroyed from any angle so long as you're curled into a ball. Rings act as a makeshift health bar, letting you take additional hits. There's weight while underwater and an oxygen limit before that horrifying music starts playing. Make it stop! But the most critical details given to us lie in the way that Sonic controls and interacts with his environment. When you move like Sonic, you feel like Sonic. When running in a direction, you gradually build up momentum until you reach top speed. Running downhill will allow you to reach that top speed much faster, and running uphill will present a natural struggle against gravity. Jumping at the height of a slope will send you high into the air. Landing on a badnik or capsule from a high elevation will have a greater rebound. And of course, rolling through those loops will give you an exhilaration like nothing else. Everything about how Sonic feels when moving is conducive to high-speed antics. However, this is merely one half of the equation. A moveset like this is only enjoyable if the levels take full advantage of it. Unlike Mario, who focuses more on flat, blocky level designs with one or two slopes at most, Sonic thrives in a curved environment. It's the superb physics in combination with dynamic stage layouts that defines classic Sonic gameplay. Being able to build up speed in unique and creative ways through vast, beautiful stages is what Sonic is all about. And Green Hill Zone, the first zone of the game, does a phenomenal job at introducing all of this to you in just a few short minutes. It's proven time and time again to be the best introductory level to a Sonic game. It's fast, beautiful, and gives you plenty of room to run around and play at your own pace. As early as the first couple of screens, you're given opportunities to learn the game's fundamentals, like rings acting as a health bar, jumping on badniks as a form of combat, the way slopes affect your movement, background set pieces that can be jumped on from underneath, the function of ring capsules, and my personal favorite, the inclusion of hidden items within certain treetops. Your first time through, you'll probably run past most of these, but when you take a closer look, you'd be surprised how many springs and item boxes you can find. You've got 10 ring monitors, invincibility power-ups, extra lives, a shield, and speed shoes, allowing you to cut loose and go for the goal. Another detail I like are the one or two cracks in the checkerboard walls that you can burrow through. I find the sound effect extremely satisfying. Not far into Act 1, the player is treated to an important gameplay concept, often referred to as alternate routes or multiple pathways. The idea is that you can stray from the neutral path and fall down to a slower, more dangerous area, or ascend to a faster, more lucrative upper route, void of danger. But no matter which path you choose, Green Hill is riddled with items to collect from head to toe. Considering that Sonic was and still is marketed as being all about speed, it's pretty commendable that so many little details were thrown in that you could only notice if you took your time. It goes to show that Sega really wanted to make a game that was not only fun for the time, but one that could stand the test of time and be enjoyable for years to come. And nowhere is this more prevalent than in the game's music. To this day, even the most jaded of Sonic fans have to admit the high-quality standard of music the series has maintained, if not improved, over the years. You don't even need to have played Sonic 1 to know Green Hill's theme. It's a timeless, carefree melody that takes you back to a simpler time. Although that's not to say that the rest of the soundtrack is any less memorable. In fact, can we talk about how insane Dr. Eggman's boss theme is in this game? It actually sounds like he's taking over the world as we fight him. It's kinda scary. God help us. But you know what? As a level 1 boss fight, this isn't half bad. It actually requires a decent amount of critical thinking to gauge when the wrecking ball will come to a stop, and how much time you have before it swings back over to you. All in all, Green Hill Zone is a near-perfect opening stage that has a little bit of everything to help complement the game's inherently unique design. So, how does Sonic Team follow up this marvelous introduction? What legendary stage could possibly succeed the nirvana of Green Hill Zone? Oh? Yeah, this is where Sonic 1 starts to flip-flop. After the first level, it can't really decide what type of game it wants to be. Half the time it feels like a Sonic game, but the other half just seems off. Marble Zone, the second area of the game, is the complete opposite of Green Hill in every way. Instead of running through a beautiful, wide-open forest area, you're attentively combing your way through a series of timing-based level obstacles in an enclosed cavern. There are no upper and lower routes, very few items off to the side, and above all, little to no freedom in how the stage is completed. There's a lot of waiting around for things to happen. Fireballs rising out of pits to keep you on your toes, glass pillars moving up and down to block your path, debris falling from the ceiling to stop you from running through, chandeliers that you need to wait for to fall within reach, and stone blocks that need pushed so that you can slowly ride them across the lava. It's a series of mundane tasks that don't really do anything to take advantage of Sonic's capabilities as a character. Now, it's been said that Marble Zone was created for the purpose of letting players catch their breath after Green Hill, and while that theoretically makes sense, I think that they went a little overboard. I get that they wanted to make a zone that was slower and more difficult than the previous, but with how often I had to stop myself from moving forward, it ended up feeling a lot more tedious than difficult. But contrary to my bitter impressions, there are some aspects of Marble Zone that I've grown to appreciate over time. The platforms that catch on fire when pushed into the lava is a cool detail unique to the area. There's a wall of lava that chases you through a confined hallway, creating some mild tension. The secret rooms hidden behind specific walls are a great reward for those who happen to stumble upon them, and even the boss is an appropriate upscale in difficulty. There are 2 platforms separated by a pit of lava that Sonic can hop between to avoid Eggman's dripping fireball attack. Like before, your safe zone is constantly moving, but now you have an added environmental hazard, ever so slightly raising the stakes. So while Marble Zone may be the complete antithesis of a Sonic level, I'm glad they at least tried to make it memorable by adding in those little details that veteran players could appreciate. Also, these bats can blow me? Spring Yard Zone is up next and, fittingly, has elements of both Green Hill and Marble Zone combined. The upper half of the stage is freeform with plenty of room to breathe and roll around, whereas the bottom half is comprised of tight indoor sections with spiked hazards and moving platforms. What stands out about Spring Yard for me is how it's a clear precursor to what we would later associate as the Token Casino level, that the series would later be known for using. Only there's a stronger emphasis on pinball rather than gambling, as there are plenty of bumpers but no slot machines of any kind. Don't worry though, you'll get your fix soon. While I don't think it leaves as strong of an impression as Green Hill did, Spring Yard is a great step in the right direction for a more difficult but still fun mid-game level. I think my favorite part has to be all the slopes you can use to curl into a ball. At the start of Act 1, if you grab the speed shoes, you'll have enough momentum to soar over the wall on the right using the red spring, skipping a lower portion and landing on 2 item capsules. And towards the end of Act 3, there's a large half pipe that can be used to build momentum and reach a hidden room with 2 more power-ups inside. Even the indoor bits have their moments. Like these secret walls you can walk through. I had no idea these were even here. When you make it to the end after crossing a large pit, Eggman will... He'll try to stab you with a large spike on the bottom of his machine, and failing that, will remove any pieces of the ground 1 block at a time, exposing the pit below and decreasing your margin of error. It's the kind of fight that gets more difficult the longer it takes, which I'm always down for. Seriously though, what happened here? Next, we have Labyrinth Zone, the infamous water level that plagued countless childhoods. Oh boy. Not only is Sonic's movement tremendously cut down while underwater, but you also have a limited supply of oxygen, meaning if you don't regularly head back up to the surface or grab an air bubble in time, then you'll begin to drown. Okay, that's enough. Most players tend to dislike Labyrinth Zone, either because of the heavier weight or the fear of drowning. But I'll be the first to admit that I actually don't hate this stage. I understand the qualms that people have with it, but I really dig the underwater ruins motif. There's something inherently adventurous about exploring dangerous underground caves. And while it is quite slow, I don't entirely mind it here. The reason that Marble Zone was boring was because it constantly stopped me dead in my tracks. But the only time I ever have to stop here is if there's an enemy or if I'm waiting for a bubble, both of which are done on my own volition, since I'll likely take damage otherwise. Plus, it's not like you're underwater for the whole zone anyway. Act 1 has a cool secret platform that you can trigger to skip a huge underwater part. Act 2 has a healthy dose of vertical climbing, and Act 3 has a fast waterfall bit, as well as an underwater current section that tries to push you into spikes. But my favorite part is definitely the boss at the end. Unlike most Eggman battles where he moves from left to right, you actually have to chase him up a vertical structure this time. The goal here isn't to land any hits, but simply make it to the top. Along the way, you'll need to carefully maneuver around spears, gargoyle heads, and of course, that dreadful water. If you play quickly enough, you can reach the top without even getting your feet wet, but if you keep messing up or take too long to make a move, you'll be submerged once again, slowing you down even more with no air bubbles in sight. It may be far from an ideal Sonic level, but I appreciate that they committed to their idea rather than haphazardly throwing something together. Yeah, like that. Starlight Zone, my second favorite level in the game. While I liked Spring Yard for being a nice midpoint, Starlight is the first level that truly feels like an expansion of Green Hill's framework. The top half is full of loops and ramps to use to build up speed, while the bottom contains intricate moving platforms requiring precision from the player to avoid falling into the pit below. But despite taking place after Labyrinth Zone, Starlight is surprisingly laid back. It's set at night just outside of an urban city, with a beautiful line of stars up in the sky and unfinished building structures at the bottom. I like how the stage tries to incorporate this theme into its design, since there are a lot of destructible platforms that crumble when you walk over them, implying that the area you're in is currently under construction. But what seals the deal for me is the chilled out lounge music that plays. It's the kind of theme that can give you nostalgia even if you never played it as a kid, which I think is pretty impressive. Oh, what the? Yeah, that's the one problem that I have with Starlight Zone. Some of the obstacles can be awkward. Whether it be an enemy you fell on by accident, a loop that consistently sends you into a pit, or just running into something that you couldn't see in time. Surprise, mother. It's not enough to make me hate it, but it is a blemish on an otherwise fantastic level. The boss takes advantage of the seesaw gimmick from earlier. Eggman will try to drop spiked metal weights onto you that you can send back up, or use as a spring to launch yourself right into the cockpit. Probably should have rethought your strategy there, old man. Finally, we've made it to Scrap Brain Zone, a diabolical factory level standing between you and victory. A common theme that the series is often associated with is nature versus technology, as the first level of many Sonic games is a lively forest area, and the final level an industrial fortress of some kind. But out of all of them, Sonic 1 does this the best. You start off in Green Hill, a completely natural landscape. Then you make your way over to Marble Zone, a stage with a clear presence of nature, but traces of man-made materials. Spring Yard has far less vegetation to offer, and the silhouette of a town not too far away. Labyrinth Zone appears to be natural at first, what with all the vines and water, but the booby traps and wall carving suggest otherwise. Starlight Zone is a continuation of Spring Yard, as the city that we observed from afar is now right next to us. And of course, Scrap Brain is the cold steel heart of the operation. Right from the get-go, this level wants you dead. Trapdoors that open with no warning, vertical beams that quickly retract from under your feet, platforms that spin to trip you up, steel hammers that try to crush you, buzzsaws placed over conveyor belts, electrical circuits that shock you, flame pillars that burst in front of you, and a vicious combination of badniks. There's so much going on in this stage that it can feel kind of messy at times. Like this part where you're running over the spinning steps that you know are about to turn, only to run straight into a flame and fall below anyway. Or these spike balls on chains. Sometimes they swing within view and you can dodge them. Other times, nope! That's ultimately the biggest problem with Scrap Brain. It's a mixed bag. There are plenty of occasions where me getting hit is completely justifiable, like the conveyor belts that cleverly slow you down before the hammers, or these disappearing platforms that are alluded to by the floating rings. But then stuff like this happens. The level wants you to take everything slowly, but it doesn't do anything to accommodate Sonic's speed, so you'll most likely end up taking hits and picking the same rings back up just to get a move on. But what I find interesting about Scrap Brain, however, is that all three acts feature some kind of thematic distinction. Act 1 gives a clear view of the dark dystopian city in the background. Tall black towers, flashing red lights, and clouds of exhaust. Act 2 takes us deeper into the factory with a mechanical background in close proximity. But before the start of Act 3, Eggman hits a switch that drops you all the way back into Labyrinth Zone for one final stretch. I get that there were probably limitations they had to work around, but having the final level be something that we've already played through just with a different color is kind of anticlimactic. It's more difficult for sure, and I do like the idea of climbing my way back up to the final boss, but I can't help but notice the repetition. When you make it back up to the final zone, you'll run to the right for a bit before entering a room with 4 large pistons. Eggman will try to crush you with 2 at a time by operating one one of them randomly, giving you a chance to land a hit. After that, 4 electrical spheres will slowly home in on your general location, and then it repeats. While I like the threat of instant death, and the randomness of the pistons keeps me on the move, as long as you jump when he comes down on you, and stay in the middle during the electrical attack, you shouldn't ever find yourself in real danger, which for a final boss is kind of a bummer. The music, on the other hand, is perfect. Scrap Brain had an eerie tune that inspired caution, but the final zone is flat out depressing, and I mean that in the best way. When you land that final hit, Eggman quickly flies away in defeat, and Sonic ponders why he didn't kill him when he had the chance. You return to Green Hill with all of the animals that you saved, Sonic jumps at the camera victoriously, and the credits roll. At the very end, Eggman will taunt you with any of the Chaos Emeralds that you didn't get. Throughout the game, if you had 50 rings when reaching the end of a non-boss act up until Scrap Brain, a giant ring would appear that could take you to the special stage when jumped into. It places you into a surreal rotating maze that has you time your movements in tandem with the changing perspective. They can be kind of disorienting at first, but once you learn how everything works, it's pretty exciting to nab the Chaos Emerald. Unfortunately, collecting them all doesn't mean anything in terms of gameplay. It just adds these flowers into the background that kind of look like Glove World balloons. Huh. Well, anyway, that's Sonic the Hedgehog 1. While it may be a little awkward to go back to after having played the later games, and it definitely has its faults, I still like it for being that charming first installment that introduced us to the character we all know today. There is an 8-bit version of Sonic 1 for the Master System that I thought about covering, but I'd rather save that for another time. Next on my list is Sonic 2. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright, see ya.